Hi, welcome. On this video, I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk about this issue of, again, talking about the typical obedience mainstream um, picture, okay, with how the majority of trainers approach training, and going beyond that to actually begin to look at this issue about the process itself as it relates to how a dog's decision making process is influenced and governed at the social relational level. Again, this is why I say dogs are, it's all about the relationship. Dogs are relational animals. And so the thing about, incentivizing the dog or getting the dog to respond to things that it likes. So a incentive can be any number of things. I mean, it can be praise. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. It can be a toy, it can be food, it can be any sort of motivating agent. I define as a motivating agent, an agent that influences the dog in such a way that the dog will go into or respond and go into certain positions as defined through the interpretive learning based narrative. Okay, so that's really the thing to really keep in mind as I talk about and go through and talk about this picture itself. It's typical. I mean, just about every dog trainer out there that I know of or I've seen train dogs invest in this narrative. They invest in this type of alignment, okay, through a position. And then here's the thing to really consider is lining it up in such a way to say, well, the dog's responding to, going into these positions. It could be a sit beside the dog owner. It could be a down. It can be a staying in the position, and lining up to say, well, that's good. Okay, rewarding that. Say that represents change. That represents response aligns to that represents the state of mind. And here's the thing to understand: that's not always true. Okay, this is where you have to go deeper than that to look at the actual motives. Okay, beyond just response. So when people this and don't get me wrong, this really challenges people that are really entrenched in this type of narrative. This has been going on for people out there. This has been going on for years and years and years and years and years, way back, and just has been built on it. But the thing to really understand when you look at the problems happening in the dog training world and how it is, that, and if you're a trainer at all, and you'll see this, is dogs can go through this narrative, but still you're going to have problems. You're still saying, well, man, I went through this, I went through weeks or months or whatever of training, and I still can't overcome these issues. It's because, again, it's about the relation. Dogs are relational animals. And so how you approach the process of changing how a dog thinks out of the starting gate, you have to look at what the process, defining the process properly. And what I show is that again, the process is a relational changing process. I understand people have trouble getting their heads around that, especially if you're used to a certain way of thinking, because it does seem to make sense when you look at dogs going into these positions, and there is a relational aspect to that that really it throws people off in such a way that makes them conform to that way of thinking, because what overrides it, what lines it up is, again, it's about the human. For example, as I could invest heavily in that narrative and incentivize the dog, and relational change will still happen based on how I think. Okay, that's key. But you'll see the consistency of that through the personality types of the people involved. And again, but extending beyond the training environment is how you interact with your dog. So you have to be able to look at this training itself as extending beyond just the training environment into a life issue, into a relationship issue. And so, but getting beyond that is, even again, in this issue about incentivizing a dog, and even this issue of control itself can be an incentive for the dog to go into positions through the person. I was saying, I'll do this and this and this because I gain something through that human on the other side of things that will empower them. And that's getting deep into this. This is why I say there's depth to, when I went through and started breaking this stuff down, people have to understand when I went through this stuff many, many years ago, I had an up close and personal view of learning theory, this learning based ideology, in a very up close and personal way. That's something people have to understand here. So when I developed this system and breaking this stuff down and starting to really challenge this and say, okay, what's going on here? There's certain contradictions here that don't make sense. Where's that? What's happening? And does that mean there's something wrong with the dog? Because ultimately, that's what how the stuff gets packaged up. And what I show very clearly, no, it's this issue about, again, the human comes into focus and how the stuff filters through relationally. So it really, what it does is it catches people off guard. And this is why a lot of times trainers will really have difficulty really challenging this, because they look at, okay, change is happening maybe for them or for certain people that they're dealing with, but within the parameters of the general population, you're going to get a lot of problems because of the human dynamic here, and understanding that when you work within the parameters of a learning-based narrative that way, you're going to have problems because of how the process sets up. So the process through this system is it's a interaction based. Okay, so it's like everything works off a certain specific interaction that frames up the picture properly, so that it's not about just the dog responding certain ways and then giving that a thumbs up. It's about making sure there's proper alignment, okay, of the dog's state of mind via response. Okay, it's really important that the motives clean up, because again, the depth of the relationship. I mean, dogs are incredible animals. People have to understand that, and this is why, if you really look at what I'm saying and just consider the issues here, I would suggest that you're going to see that what I'm showing is right on. And here's the thing: I've been using this system of training, this relational approach, this model, for years and years and years and years and years. Okay, and it's solid. And the people I help go through consistently, come to me, have gone through both so-called balanced dog training and pure positive, however you want to define it. I talk about this spectrum too as well, about you can even be very intentional about the escalation or risk levels that the motives are going to go sideways by there's almost a formula that you can look at it. I can look at it in a certain way and tell you very quickly where a person's at, and there's a way to test the motives of dogs too. So this system, of the methodology in this system, what it does is it creates change. It's multi-layered. So if the person doesn't need to change, it lines it up. If the person does need to change, the methodology does that as well. So it's a kind of all-encompassing methodology. It lines everything up. It's very specific. So again, I would encourage anyone that has questions about training, about the system, if you're struggling, if you're a trainer even, contact me. I can work it out, help you get to a certain point of understanding the dynamics involved, the process. I have a trainer's course I offer. Take a look at that. It's 2 weeks. If you're a dog owner and you're struggling, I would encourage you to really look at this. It's the great news is that you don't have to struggle. That with dogs, they'll move forward. When you apply this approach, it's just like a brand new day. It's not like it's not the past that defined that way. Dogs will come out of that. They'll move forward because it's a different process. So just again, encourage people to take a look at it. Thanks for watching.